Hey guys, it's Clint. Welcome to Sweetcast. So this topic has been covered by a few different people. Comics Matter with your boy Zach for once, I know, for one. Ethan Van Sciver for another, and probably several others. However, I have opinions on this particular matter, so I want to share them. So if you're not aware of this, this was a cover that was done by Dan Panosian, and some critic, I guess, I forget her name. She's really not anybody of note, but she looked at it and was very upset with what she was seeing, and it all has to do with how the page is laid out. So I wanted to look at some specifics, but this is another example of things kind of creeping. Like there tends to be people fighting straw man arguments on both sides, frankly, and it makes things worse because then people actually end up adopting those straw man positions. It's really ridiculous. So I want to get into this. I've been promoting myself so much, my book Downcast. I wanted to take the day, this video, and just promote somebody else's project. This is Night Stalker number 1 and number 2, and they're in the home stretch right now. I'm going to put a link in the description below for this campaign. It looks like it should be a lot of fun, so go ahead and just check it out, and if you're interested, it'd be a good idea. Now would be the time to support it. All right, so let's jump over to Bounding into Comics, because I think they did a good job of showing us the problem. I'm not going to really read through this, but I'm just going to point out some landmarks because I've got a different point that I want to make that's beyond this. So Claire Napier, apparently she's an artist, so to speak, and she's also a critic. She's not super well known by any means, but I guess known enough to get some attention, at least just recently. So she posted this picture, this tweet of a comic book cover, and in this particular cover, she drew eye lines. Now, once someone has drawn lines over a piece of work, it changes the composition, so it's kind of hard to see where it would naturally be. I mean, it's not that difficult to get your head wrapped around it, but it does change things a little bit. So I'm going to look at the original cover here in a minute, but I just wanted to point out that this is being used as an example of basically misogyny in comic books, especially on a cover. Now, things have changed a lot in comics. Just researching this video, I looked up misogynist comic book covers, and I have to admit there are some that are just like it's sacrificing the storytelling for sexuality. Some of them look seriously like a porno magazine. Now, I don't think that's the norm because I've been reading comics for a while. There are definitely some, and it depends on what titles you're looking for. In my opinion, and as a writer, I feel like the story is most important. So depending on what that story is supposed to be about, when I find something that's just blatantly using sex to sell it for no other reason, like it has no point to the story, has nothing to do with the character, it's just being used to sell it, it's kind of annoying. I realize that probably a lot of people are going to disagree with me here, and that's okay. That's my opinion. So having said that, I think everyone should have the right to make whatever cover you want. I'm just saying from a storytelling perspective, depending on the character, I've seen some pretty over the top covers. Having said that, this cover is not one of them. This doesn't make any sense to me how this becomes such a big hot button issue. And honestly, I'll say that most covers that I see, whether it's from today or even from the evil 90s, it doesn't seem like they're overly sexualized. Though, don't get me wrong, there are some. Okay, so in this case, this really, to me, this is an example of how much things have changed. And I was getting the sense that all the people that are anti-Comicsgate that have been fighting this battle for so long, they're realizing they're not making any progress with Comicsgate. So their initial goal is to drive people out of the industry. People that are already on the outside of the industry, like Comicsgate, really that's a target they're not going to make any progress on. So if they look inward, and that's what this is they're eating their own, essentially, and they can't find anything that's meeting their criteria for over-sexualization, or if they have, they don't care about it for sure, because this is the target. Now, they're saying that in this image, basically the crotch here is where your eyes are being directed. I've studied just a little bit about cover design and composition, and it really, you don't have to study a lot to be able to look and see where your eyes go. You just have to pay a little bit of attention, and part of that would just be looking at the image. So this is a separate one that Dan himself posted, and he's showing where the eye lines go, and of course it's to the character's face. Now, at first I thought, of course it's pointing at their face because that's just good design. That's how design works. Usually you connect to a human face. That's absolutely true, even with YouTube thumbnails. If I have a big human face and there's emotion happening on that face, that video is going to get more clicks. So you don't need sexualization to get people interested. Don't get me wrong, that's something that could work for sure, and it does work, absolutely does work. But there is something about humans wanting to see another human's face. It's just true. So good design principles would look something like this, where you've got some kind of focal point, and you'll notice that this is a very emotional face. Now, I have no idea what's going on with this comic. I have no idea, no desire to read it. I would say that this is another face that draws my attention because, again, there's emotion, and she's a really unfortunate looking woman. I don't even know. Again, this is not a series I follow whatsoever. Now, I've seen lots of pictures of comic books that are, I would agree, sexualized, and even many crotch shots. I was kind of surprised at how many. If you Google it, I'll let you do it. There's tons of comic books where you get full view of crotch. Now, generally in those kinds of images, there's some kind of sexualized position. This character, this is where none of this makes sense. This is not a sexualized position. I can't think of any way that you would say otherwise. There is one finger pointing, right? But most of the fingers, the hands, the fists, the eye lines, everything is going to this face. This makes sense, and you can tell even if you're not an artist, you just look at it, that feels correct. And if you look at this one, it just doesn't feel correct. You intuitively know. I mean, it's designed to make you look. It's a manipulation of the viewer, so you know what's going on. So it does take some effort to look and find these kinds of things. Okay, so that for sure is something. Now, part of the problem here is there are a lot of people that want to change the world. You're trained in college, with the desire, and you're charged to go out and change the world, as if that's the most important thing you can do. Not make yourself a good person, and be a decent person, change yourself, be a better person, help a family, help a person, help an individual. No, it's change the world. And I am amazed at how often I hear this all of the time. Like, changing the world is the key. So the way that people do this, and I've been in these classes, I've seen these media classes so many times. You're rewarded for looking at a piece of media and finding some kind of innate misogyny, racism, etc., etc. So in this particular cover, and I'll say, like, this cover doesn't do much for me if I didn't see the lines, if there wasn't some kind of outrage over it, I honestly just don't care. So I'm really surprised that this is one that was picked out for who being sexualized. Doesn't make sense. I've seen much worse comics currently. Like, I'm thinking of like Harley Quinn titles. Again, I don't want to compare them to ones that you could find on the internet that are truly, I think, overdone. But compared to even books like Harley Quinn or others, this is far the opposite direction. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so I think that there's a valid criticism in how people are posed. And what I want to say is that poses aren't supposed to be realistic, especially not in art. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to tell a story. It's supposed to convey emotion. It's supposed to do something else. You're manipulating the person that's seeing it. Okay? It's not supposed to be real life. Otherwise, we'd all just look at photographs of regular people, or you go sit on your front porch and just watch people walk. That's real life for you there. So people aren't going to comics for real life. However, in order to suspend disbelief and to believe in a story and to be willing to go along with it, things can't be so far out of the normal that it's jarring. And That line is going to be different depending on who the viewer is. So I actually found this little video. I'm just going to play a little clip for you here. This is from Pop Trigger, I guess, but they're a part of the Young Turks network. So buckle up.
Objectified, if you will. One artist in India is hoping to change this. Her name is Shreya Arora, and she is showing male heroes posed in a similar way as female heroes have been posed. Here we see She-Hulk, who besides being a very, we've seen this one with the butt, in a very, actually physically unnatural shape. Her spine would have to be dislocated for that to work. Yeah. And this is her.
I gotta say, some of those, when people have complaints about some of these images, those aren't that bad. Like, Google it if you're really interested in it. There are some that are definitely over the line. They're really, really sexualized. But posing men and posing women, not just in comics, and I've done a video about this before, but in magazines, in just photography, anything like that, whenever you have control over the composition of an image, be it art or otherwise, you want that image to do some work for you, right? A picture has 1,000 words. So if you're making a comic and your goal is to, arouse somebody or, use sex appeal, then obviously you're going to use sexualized images. If your goal is to make somebody look feminine, I would say that that's not the same thing. The same thing with men in male poses. You'll see all sorts of unnatural poses in photography with men in them, and you don't see guys standing like that all the time on the regular. It's done on purpose. That's what makes it art. You have control over it to do something, bigger than just reflect reality. Okay, so this is where the divide comes. I'm agreeing that there have been, I haven't seen so many recently, but there have been comics that have sexualized women so much to the detriment of the story. And my argument is that, that makes for bad storytelling. On the other hand, there are certainly people that have gone way, way overboard trying to find these bad comics, that they're willing to find things that genuinely aren't intended to be that way, and certainly objectively to most people wouldn't even be viewed that way. So this is another example of, I just feel like we're living in two different worlds. Okay, and so this article talked a little bit about fridging, and I guess there's a website that was set up by Gail Simone called Women in Refrigerators, because that is a thing. And the site suggests that women in comics should not be abused, depowered, or reduced to plot devices. This is where things get really, really hairy, because we're talking about characters. We're not talking about real people. When you're telling stories, you need plot, right? You need characters. You need plot devices. Like, you need this kind of stuff to happen. If women are going to be off limits and used for storytelling, this definitely, it really puts a lot of restrictions around what a storyteller can and can't do. So my question would be, when would it be okay for, in a story, a woman to be abused? Now, I don't like anyone being abused. Nobody. I don't like anyone being abused. In a story, could you imagine a story that was making a point or was exploring an issue that's tough, or any other thing, where there might be a woman that's abused in that story? I certainly can. I can think of reasons, women, men, or otherwise, where it would make sense. What about depowered? Would it make sense for a woman to be depowered for a story? This is where I feel like there's massive, massive confusion and misunderstanding of how storytelling works. Characters changed, or they changed throughout the course of a story. And so if a character is depowered, possibly that's an opportunity for them to rise to the occasion. That makes for good storytelling. That doesn't mean that you're saying that women shouldn't have power, or for men for that same, on that same note, because many men in stories, at least at one point, can become depowered. So all this stuff, it gets me thinking a lot. It bothers me for sure. I think that there's legitimate criticisms for how people, especially women, sometimes women, are portrayed in comics. because it depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell and if that cover is doing the work to serve the story. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know the answer in every single circumstance because it depends so much on the story and what that storyteller is trying to do. On the other hand, things have changed so much in comics that just this cover bringing up such a tough point. When I first saw this cover and I heard it was part of a controversy, without seeing any lines drawn over anything, I look at it and I was really trying to figure out what is wrong. What would people's complaints be? And I honestly thought it was this woman in the green, and that she was being disempowered or, victimized or something like that. I had no idea that it was that this finger is pointing up at this crotch. It's just, can we raise the level of critique just a little bit? If you're going to find problems, I'm all for critique. There should be critique in comics, but you have to be able to back it up. I mean, it has to be backed up by reality and reasonable arguments. And there's lots of critiques out there like that. I've seen several. However, this is not one of them. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And if you want to sign up for Downcast, which is my comic, do so in the comments below or in the description below. But also check out Night Stalker. I'm going to leave the link here so that you can check this out and back it quick because they're running out of time. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.